Hello, my name is Snarf, and today I want to talk about Call of Duty World at War. The fifth entry in the series, Call of Duty World at War takes us back to the global conflict of World War II. When originally announced that the new title would be taking place in World War II, players' excitement was somewhat dulled. After the amazing reception and success that was COD4, the retreading of World War II felt like Call of Duty was going back to the well and trying to play things safe. Players went on to be presented with one of the most influential, and I dare say, important entries in Call of Duty that still has its waves being felt today in modern Call of Duty games and others like it in 2023. TreyArch and Activision were rewarded with the title claiming to be the 7th most sold game in 2008, despite it being released in November of that year. Review outlets would also be very appreciative of the title, and when aggregated with their scores, World at War would come to be an 84% per Metacritic. The game launches with the typical story campaign, which is going to be the main focus of my video here, and a fleshed out competitive multiplayer that could be argued was the main drawing point of the series at that point. World at War, however, would also bring with it a third way to play in the form of a round-based survival mode that could be played with up to 4 players. This third mode would go on to be one of the top selling points of the TreyArch title and created a new fan base within Call of Duty that even rivals that of the competitive multiplayer. Before moving forward, I want to point out that World at War holds no nostalgia for me. When World at War released in 2008, I was just a teenager and still needed an adult present when purchasing M-rated games. I was one of the players previously described who, upon learning that World at War was set during World War II, became completely uninterested in purchasing it. I wouldn't come to play World at War until a decade later when I finally picked up a copy in the middle of 2019 to round out my collection of the series and to finally see what I had missed out on. The title being 11 years old at the time, I went in with my expectations checked. I had gone back through and played through COD4 before to better reacclimate with the style of the time. So, when I finally got around to see what I had missed out on for a complete decade, I was genuinely impressed with the game and found it to be a very enjoyable experience, despite its age. But now, in the year of 2023, how will World at War stack up? Will it actually be better or worse than what came before it in Call of Duty 4? Will it stand above as the new king of Call of Duty in my tier list rankings? And will it still stand tall against the more modern entries that have come after it? Stick with me through this overly long explanation of one man's personal opinions on a series and title and find out. Or, just click on one of the timestamps I put below if you don't have the time. But please, watch the video. I really need the views.
Make an atoll. Little more than sand, trees, and a small Japanese military base.
Our first mission brief describes the events of World War II in the Pacific. We begin as Private Miller in the United States Marine Corps. We were tasked with doing reconnaissance on Macon Atoll as there was a small Japanese base there. It's been a week with no contact and we are considered to be MIA. All of this is narrated to us by one Corporal Roebuck, voiced by the gravelly tones of Kiefer Sutherland.
You think because you say nothing, you are strong?
Saved by Roebuck, we immediately assault the beach that we were on. Fighting against the Japanese forces that held us captive, we work our way down the beach, moving from hut to hut. TreyArch also departs from the typical opening of a Call of Duty title, not putting the player in a boot camp or training scenario, but having us start immediately with killing the enemy as it shows the controls to us. Trial by fire of sorts. TreyArch shows us that this new Call of Duty is much bloodier and gorier than what Infinity Ward gave us with COD4. As we fight through the Japanese, body limbs are being blown off bodies. After fighting our way across the small island, we get to a communications and weapons depot that the Japanese have set up. We are tasked with blowing it all up and getting the hell out of the area with the rescued Marines. For my rating, this mission only gets a C. In terms of the layout and what it is asking us to do as players, there was nothing really that special going on. It stuck very close to the bread and butter of Call of Duty, and the setting was nothing interesting either. Set in World War II, about the only interesting thing this does is have us set as a Marine in the Pacific rather than the GI in Europe. Remember, this was 2008. World War II was done to death by Call of Duty 1 through 3 and the rivaling title of Medal of Honor. The breath of fresh air that was COD4 being in Modern Warfare was immediately drenched by this cold bucket of water of going back to the dried up well of World War II.
Years after the raid on Macon, we're heading up an all-out assault on Peleliu Island. No POWs to rescue this time.
After escaping from that beach on Macon Atoll, we jump forward in time to 1944. We are assaulting White Beach and are told that we will be accomplished in 3 days. But it will be a hard 3 days.
This is it, Miller.
Okay, keep it together and we'll get through this in 3 days.
When you make a World War II game, there is always that one mission that you have to do, and that is D-Day. If you play as an American soldier, you get to play part in D-Day at Normandy. It is just a fact. With World at War having us play in the Pacific Theater though, we still find ourselves in D-Day. And that's because for the Marines, it seemed like every other week they were taking part in a rotation of D-Day missions, as they had to jump from island to island to fight the Japanese. So, we begin a landing craft as we attempt to land on White Beach, Peleliu. We are shelled by mortar fire from the island and watch as other landing crafts blow up around us, and even soldiers within our own craft are sniped. Our boat actually explodes and we fly into the water to be pulled ashore by Sergeant Sullivan.
I got you, Miller. You're still in one piece. Plan's gone to shit. Tojo's got a defensive line just beyond the tree line. We got heavy enemy fire tearing up the beach.
After being handed a radio, we call in a rocket strike and make our way up the beach, fighting our way to the trenches where the Japanese have entrenched themselves. If you weren't exposed to it from the first mission, you will certainly be exposed to it here. And that is the constant grenade spam that the enemy will toss at you. If you dare to stand still for more than 3 seconds, you will have a grenade land at your feet until you quell the opposing forces. We get into the trenches and get a small respite from the fight when we see Japanese snipers hiding in the trees.
Sullivan, the tree. What the hell is he doing? Take him down.
If you attempt to get closer for an easier shot though, they will pop up from the grass and ambush you with bayonet charges while screaming "Banzai!" After taking the primary bunker and defending it from a wave of Japanese reinforcements, we get a small break from the fighting. Sergeant Sullivan tells us that we did good work, but then a scream comes from the door.
What now, Sarge?
Secure the surrounding area. Wait for the major's orders.
When do we rest?
Soon, Pulaski.
We get ambushed by a single soldier with a bayonet. Sullivan charges the door, only to be skewered by the soldier and dies on the spot. This is stupid. In a room full of Marines, who while being exhausted from just fighting up the beach, are still armed and pulsing with adrenaline. You have rifles, shotguns, and machine guns at hand. But when a door bursts open, instead of using the gun in his hand, Sergeant Sullivan decided that hand-to-hand was a better tactic. No one was caught off guard by the yell. No one was even close to the door. Half a dozen men could have made this bonsai charger resemble a slice of Swiss cheese. Sullivan being one of them, but instead he chose to ram himself onto the bayonet. As a mission, assaulting the beach was a small spectacle, and being able to call in bombing runs and missile strikes throughout the mission gave some variety. But TreyArch is again playing very close to the bread and butter that makes Call of Duty. Making the Japanese hide in trees and pop up from the grass to ambush us gives a bit more excitement, but with how they are placed, it is again nothing outstanding. And the stupid way in which they kill Sergeant Sullivan is still beyond reasoning to me. My rating is a C+ due to the extra flair. It's better than the first mission, so a good trajectory for going forward, but hopefully we get better commanding officers soon.
We're all numb by Sullivan's death. We just never saw it coming. I still can't believe it. Most solid, dependable, and courageous Marine we've ever known.
Roebuck now leading the squad of Marines on Peleliu, we work our way through the jungles. Our objective is to take the airfield that is on the island. We find a shot down airplane and go to investigate it as it was still on fire and smoking.
Poor bastard must have been shot down this morning.
Fuselage is still smoking. Check for survivors.
Turns out that it was booby-trapped. It goes off and we hear the Japanese scream their war cries as they ambush us. We fight our way up to the battlefield and get to the bunkers. Our flamethrower unit goes down and we are tasked with using that flamethrower to take out the machine gun nests in the bunkers. The flamethrower is more impressive than it should be in this game. There are very few games that can deliver an interesting flamethrower. Typically the range is far too short and you are better off using something that shoots lead. But in World at War, you can immobilize and take out enemies with ease by using the flamethrower, and it is actually a joy to use. Once we get up to the primary bunker by the airfield, we have to clear the Japanese out of it. There are 2 levels to this bunker, and it is absolutely filled with Japanese soldiers. Fortunately, the flamethrower is less effective in these circumstances, so we have to go back to shooting guns. The enemy is rather entrenched in this bunker, and moving forward through it can be somewhat difficult. But once inside, and once we move up to the 2nd floor, we are greeted by a view of the wrecked airfield that is currently exploding, from tanks exchanging fire with each other and bombs raining from the sky. This area is wide open. We need to move up though, and to do so, we need to destroy the enemy tanks. Unlike the mission, All In, where we could close the distance to the tanks and use C4, we have to scavenge bazookas littered around the trenches and take out the tanks. If you do not know where these are, you can actually spend a bit of time in this section just looking for a weapon that won't plink off the armor. But once we do find the bazooka, we make quick work of the tanks. On the other side of the airfield now, we have to assault another Japanese position. This time is where they have their AA guns set up and are currently shooting down our planes. We need to take them out so that we can actually take the airfield. This can be done pretty quickly if you are a good shot or have a good arm, as a single grenade can take out both gunners. Once we do take the airfield, the Japanese just don't give up. They make a final push and we need to hold them off until our air support arrives to take the airfield for us. They throw ground troops, they have trucks bringing more troops in, and they throw tanks at us, all trying to take back their airfield. Thankfully though, we have access to their triple 30s that they were using as AA guns. We turn them around, point them at the enemy, and easily mow our way through the ground troops, the trucks, and even the tanks. Eventually, air support drops bombs and we take the airfield.
Yes, sir. The airfield has been held. Repeat, the airfield has been held.
The start of this mission I thought was rather boring. It had uninteresting terrain and simple routes for us to handle the enemy. And the AI is far from what you might call intelligent. But once the game starts to leave the bread and butter alone and starts serving us variety, the mission actually begins to pick up. Some of that variety came from the flamethrower, a bit more from the open field with the tanks, and finally with the AA gun, using it to mow down the final wave of enemies. TreyArch is showing themselves as competent in being able to create something that is enticing to the players, but also feels like they have a box of check marks they need to hit before being allowed the freedom to throw in that variety. The late mid-end of this mission is where it really started to shine for me, and earns itself a B-.
The rotten cancer of the fascist Reich ravages Europe like a plague. The arrogance of their leaders is matched only by the brutality of their soldiers. These are the darkest days of the Nazi occupation of Stalingrad.
With Peleliu airfield taken, we move away from the Pacific and go to the other side of the world, where we find ourselves as one Private Petrenko in Stalingrad on September 17th, 1942. We are now a member in the Russian Red Army and wake up in a well full of dead bodies, dead Russian bodies. And the Nazis are making sure that the bodies are actually dead by shooting them some more. second reason we weren't pumped full of an extra dose of lead is due to the dead bodies on top of us. We crawl our way through the blood and dirt and find Sergeant Reznov, a sniper in the Red Army who was also spared from the Nazis' execution by hiding among the dead as well. He directs us to follow him and crawl over to a break in the wall. He hands us a sniper and has us watch as a car arrives with a Nazi commander, one General Heinrich Amsel.
God is General Heinrich Amsel, architect of Stalingrad's misery. He is responsible for the cold-blooded murder of men, women, and children.
Reznov was tasked with killing him, but his hand was shot and he can no longer do it. He waxes on about sniping and hunting one's prey, that you have to be patient when doing so. And killing Amsel now would reveal our location and we would be butchered along with the other men in the well. And Reznov has no inclination to join the dead just yet. Eventually, we are handed ammo for the sniper and are told to snipe the enemy outside of the building Amsel went inside of, as the sound of our shots will be muffled from the sound of the passing planes above us.
Shoot now!
We quickly take them out and move up, but more Nazi reinforcements are quickly coming up to us. We hide in a burning building with Reznov, following him through the wreckage as he continues to wax on of Russia and the Nazis.
For days, I have crept through shadows like a rat. But this place once echoed with conversations of friends and lovers. No longer. Mark my words, comrade. One day things will change. We will take the fight to their land.
But as we move, we get spotted by a Nazi sniper and are now pinned in a building and have to counter-snipe the sniper. The other sniper is hiding in a building across the square and we have to wait for him to reveal his position to us. We wash the windows and wait for him to pop out so that we can shoot him. I'm not gonna lie, this was more difficult than I thought it would be. The other sniper does not spend much time out in the open for us to take a shot and moves from window to window to avoid getting shot. Even deploys some tactics to trick us.
Good hunting! The patrols will surely have heard those shots. We need to get moving.
After taking out the other sniper, we continue moving through the buildings when Nazis roll down the street. We hide from them, but they have dogs and they sniff us out, begin to set the building we're in on fire. We run with Reznov through the structure and get trapped under a burning beam. We try to lift it off, but burn our hands. Reznov comes back and saves us. We jump out of the building as it blows up, and on the ground, dazed and confused, we get approached by 3 Nazis. Looks like this is about to be our end, but a small squad of Russians comes to our rescue and mows them down, saving us. We now have to provide sniper support to the Russian squad from the building above as they move forward on a Nazi position. We shoot a Nazi with a flamethrower and he blows up, taking multiple Nazis with him, and the assault begins. We lend our sniper support, taking out Nazis as our Russian comrades move forward below. Nazis make their way onto the roofs where we and Reznov are, and we swap from lending our sniper support to our comrades below to close combat for a brief period. Once stunned though, we move back to sniping Nazis across the street as the Russians continue to work their way up to the building. We aid them by taking out the machine guns, Nazis above them, and half-tracks that are rolling up, eventually allowing them to move up to the building and claim the communications post for Russia.
Communication post! Answer will try to run! Quickly, we must cut off his escape route!
We follow Reznov to another sniping position that overlooks the command post where Amsel will be. Our comrades rush out, but instead of helping them, we are ordered by Reznov to stay still, that by their sacrifice, we will be able to kill Amsel as he tries to escape.
Unavenged. The death of General Amsel will be just the beginning. Look ahead! The building adorned with flags is the German command post.
We now have to shoot General Amsel before he escapes. He is running from cover to cover. If you are quick enough, you can kill him at any point while he escapes.
Amsel is running!
Once Amsel is dead though, the Nazis know where we are and assault us with their full force. We follow Reznov and have to jump into the river to avoid the Nazis from killing us. This is honestly the first mission that it felt like TreyArch was allowed the freedom to make what they wanted. It follows the basic steps of a slow beginning and a bombastic finish. The slower, more methodical fighting style. The way they fleshed out Reznov as he waxes on about Russia and the war. Not to mention very little sprinting into the enemy, which is the bread and butter of Call of Duty. The things that the game kept us doing was constantly changed up, and that earns this mission an A- from me. I was honestly feeling a little dragged out by the repetitive nature of the missions as Private Miller, so switching over to play as the Russians was a fantastic way to re-engage us as players.
The Red Army's advance into Germany is swift and brutal. In mere months, we have reached Silo Heights, the last line of defense before the German capital. We outnumber the Germans 10 to 1. There, we will ensure that every sacrifice is repaid in blood.
After a quick dip in the river of Stalingrad, we jump forward to 1945, now in Germany instead of Russia. Petrenko is captured by Nazis, his squad once again dead, and him the only survivor. We reach for our weapon and get the shit kicked out of us.
Nein! Großes Schwein, du hättest lieber tot bleiben sollen!
We get saved by Reznov, and as we leave the house we were in, we see German farms burning around us as the Russian army advances with infantry and tanks. We follow Reznov down a path and across the river, and are met with a choice of taking the left or the right path. We choose a path to go down. Either way, we fight our way through the German ranks, marching our way towards Berlin. After fighting through the Germans' trenches, burning them out with the use of Molotovs and a liberal application of machine gun fire, we come out to open fields once again. German tanks are everywhere, and like in Hard Landing, we have to scavenge rocket launchers to take them out. Once is fun and new, twice is a good repeat, but if we do this again and soon, I fear that the variety of doing this type of task will have run out. But for right now, it still feels alright to shoot rockets at tanks. After dealing with the German tanks, we regroup with Reznov at a barn, just for one more German tank to come rolling out along with more Nazi soldiers. In the barn, we hear Chernov, a private like us, remark that Reznov seems to enjoy the slaughter of the Nazis perhaps a bit too much.
Sergeant Reznov, you seem to relish in the slaughter.
I've seen my friends die in front of me in the hands of this world. They deserve everything they get. And
We ride the tank to the next Nazi camp, and it is here that we are told to use the rocket launchers to take out their guard towers that are shooting rockets at our tanks. Here, we are told to use the rocket launchers on the towers where the Germans are shooting their own rockets at us. We also have to deal with their forces on the ground at the same time. As a quick aside, there seems to be a growth in how TreyArch handled enemies in this game compared to Infinity Ward in COD4. I might be wrong. If I am, let me know in the comments below. But the use of enemy closets seems to be significantly reduced. Feels like, for the most part, that there's a finite amount of enemies in a level section, and once we kill them, we can move up. Now, I am not about to say that TreyArch is not using enemy closets where an unlimited number of enemies will spawn from, but it does feel like they are not used as much as they were by Infinity Ward. As we move through the farms and camps in this level, it does feel like if we kill the Nazis that are there, more are not just going to spawn in and take their place until we come within X distance to disable it. This type of game design is much more enjoyable, in my own opinion. You end up feeling like progress is always being made, that it is no longer a fight of pure attrition, that every foot you gain is one that will remain. So many times during my playthrough of COD4, it felt like even if I killed a dozen or so enemies in a building, there was always an immediate reinforcement that would be taking their place. That you had to put yourself in danger and run into and through the enemy fire to gain any ground. Right now, in World at War, it feels like you can gain a foothold and smartly work your way through the enemy's positions, weakening their defenses enough to make a break in their fire to dash through. We continue to break through the Germans' camp, pushing them continually back. Reznov displays his bloody thirst for vengeance, saying that we shall hunt all of them down and show no mercy, just as they showed no mercy in Stalingrad. An eye for an eye. The mission ends as we mow down Nazis as they start to flee from the battlefield, shooting them in the back. Reznov hops up on a tank and salutes his comrades, rallying them, saying that they have succeeded.
It brings us closer to Berlin, closer to victory, closer to revenge.
All in all, this is an interesting mission. I'm surprised that Petrenko has survived as much as he does, but it's a Call of Duty game, so it's expected. Fighting through the farms and pushing into the enemy camps, while nothing was very interesting in terms of the layout, it did prove to be competent. Enough cover was available to not make it feel like a Sisyphean task, and liberal use of rocket launchers seems to be a trend with TreyArch right now. Overall, enjoyable. It earns a B from me.
The enemy still hold on to most of the inland areas of the island. A maze of trenches and artillery positions run right through this whole godforsaken rock. The enemy's dug in deep, and we have to get our hands dirty. Flamethrowers. We'll burn them out.
We jump back to being Private Miller and listen to Roebuck describe the Japanese forces, remarking that their set of maze-like trenches everywhere makes getting through their lines quite difficult. But with a problem comes a solution, and that solution is flamethrower. Still on Peleliu, it is still September 15th, 1944. In the Japanese trenches, we have a flamethrower and are immediately met with an MG pinning us down. With the use of smoke grenades, we can advance safely enough though, but still have to contend with the relentless Japanese army. Using our flamethrower though, we are able to push through and take out their bunkers and MG nests very quickly. This is also where we get to really use the 1897 trench gun to its fullest capabilities. The combination of using a flamethrower and the shotgun is a blast. The only shortcoming is when the Japanese have their snipers take aim at us from the trees above and are out of range of both of our choice of weapons. Fighting through the trenches, we have to be quick with our reactions, as the Japanese will just as quickly stab us with their bayonets and toss grenades at our feet. We have to take out their mortar positions to advance. Much like the AA guns from Hard Landing, this can be done quickly with a well-placed grenade of your own, but they have so many soldiers surrounding their positions that getting an angle on them can be quite difficult. We have to go through their tunnel networks that are positively filled with enemy forces. At the end, we find the final mortar pit and take it out, marking the end of this mission.
Tanks are now en route to the point.
Tanks are moving up! Radio command. Tell them we've cleared the mortar pits. Good work, Marines.
A very short mission. The pace is a sprint to the finish, it felt like, as you never get a moment of peace from the very beginning to the very end. I feel like this is one of the few moments in this game where I am actually going to praise the level design. Confining us to the tight trenches surrounded by enemies, not just in front of us and to the sides, but also above us in the trees and on top of the trenches. It makes for a hectic level. Be quick or be dead is the name of the game here, and the flamethrower really shines brightly with how useful it proves to burn a hole for us to get through the enemy defenses. Solid A-.
Getting this far has been tougher than any of us could ever have imagined. Taking the airfield and the mortar pits showed us that the enemy will fight to the death for every last inch of this land. They're making their last stand in the jungles and caves that surround the heavy guns at the point. We take them, and we take Peleliu.
Roebuck is again narrating, and we again are still on Peleliu. We are attempting to drive the Japanese completely off the island, but they are networked in tunnels, making this objective extremely difficult. We are riding on a tank, listening to Roebuck explain what we are doing. But as we go around a bend, those tanks get obliterated by the entrenched Japanese. Work our way up the entrenched bunker and eventually make our way to a triple 25 gun and use it to wipe out the enemy as much as we can. We have to take out the Japanese position so our tanks can move forward, but it is all trenches, and there is seemingly an endless line of Japanese in those trenches. What I said before about this game not using endless enemies coming out of closets does not apply to this level, as this truly felt like they are never ending as we fight up to them. We fight our way to the next artillery position and eventually take out the enemy, allowing our tanks to advance. But the small breather we had is short-lived. We have a hill to climb up and caves full of the enemy to wipe out. We use the tanks as cover as we advance up, but it is still a hard fight to the caves themselves. With our M1919 machine gun, we mow through batches of enemies as they come screaming out at us. And once inside, they make us fight for every goddamn inch. At the end of the tunnels though, we finally capture the Japanese artillery and end the mission. We've been served, once again, bread and butter of Call of Duty. There are enemies ahead of us in one direction, and they won't stop coming until we grind them down and advance enough. After the actually fun and quick pace of the previous mission, I was hoping for more from this campaign, as Roebuck described the caves in the beginning. Unfortunately, we don't get that. We get a boulder to push. Sometimes it is fun to push the boulder. Other times it's a chore. And around the first artillery position blowing up, our boulder pushing becomes a chore. I can't give this anything more than a D+. The mission was shorter. If there happened to be something fun in the tunnels to shake up the routine, it would have been better. But instead, we were served bread and butter and given a chore of pushing a boulder.
We have lost many brave men, but their sacrifice is not in vain. Our tanks now form a line of steel so powerful that all German resistance will be crushed beneath its mighty treads. Today, we will watch as Sula falls, along with all those foolish enough to stand in our way.
Back to Europe we fly. Reznov describes that the Red Army has deployed a line of tanks to push the Germans back, and push we do. We are in a tank. We get to play a vehicle section in a Call of Duty game. This is new. This is fun. Tank controls decently, and we have a large open field to battle in that is littered with German tanks, rocket launchers, and enemies that are entrenched. Our tank, with its main gun, also has a flamethrower as a secondary weapon. So, as we roll across the open farms, we are told by Reznov to burn it all down, and burn we do. Artillery surrounds us, but with one well-placed round from our main gun, we blow them apart one by one. Once dealing with the artillery, we have to destroy a radio tower. Rolling across the open fields, watching as rockets get launched at us, enemy tanks advance on us, and the Nazi infantry scramble, it is a major set piece of a time. And the entire time, we have a Russian choir singing. Dealing with the radio tower, our objective is the train station where the Nazis are fully dug in. As we crest the hill, we see rockets fly at us, but we push on and blow tanks and Panzerschreck troopers to pieces until none remain. After pushing through all of the German defenses, we get to the trains, and as we board with our comrades, Reznov is waxing poetically about how we, Petrenko, have cheated death time after time and over again since Stalingrad, and that we represent the beating heart of the Red Army.
I saw this man cheat death time after time at the siege of Stalingrad. As long as he lives, the heart of this army cannot be broken. He makes us all proud.
This was a great mission. Like many of the major set pieces of Call of Duty, they throw in that unique mission that changes up how they expect us to interact. Like the AC-130 mission from before, I feel like this almost reaches those same heights. The tank's controls were simple, taking almost no time to get used to how it moves and how we should accomplish our objectives. Being able to roll around the field, taking out the Nazis, was a complete blast. Easily an A+ from me.
With the line of Silo now broken, nothing stands between the Red Army and Berlin. Every day, we carve deeper into German territory. Every day, fear and desperation erode their will. When our train reaches Berlin, they will have nowhere left to hide.
We disembark from that train in Berlin. It is April 23rd, 1945. The Russians have pierced through the Nazis' lines and pushed them all the way back to Berlin. The end of World War II is quickly approaching, but before this can happen, the Russians have to take Berlin. And what better kind of set piece belongs in a Call of Duty than being one of the Red Army's infantry to do just that? With our comrades by our side, we leap from the rail car and charge into Berlin. The city has been bombed to all hell, and the Nazis are dug in deep. Our first task is to assist our armored division to take out the Nazis' Panzerstreik crews so that they may advance. As we rip through the Nazis' lines, we are once again reminded to show no mercy to them should they try and surrender. After a tank helps make a path for us by running itself through a wall, we find more Nazis to kill in a well-defended courtyard. Once past the courtyard and in the building they were occupying, everything falls quiet. Reznov tells us to be cautious, and not a moment later are we ambushed by the Germans. It is a frantic fight through the large building. But with the help of a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun that would bring a smirk to the Doomslayer himself, we continue to rip and tear our way through the Nazis. After we rout the Germans from the building, we dash our way back into the streets and follow a set of tanks. If we go to the rear of one of the tanks, you can actually get on the mounted gun. With the help of the tanks, we are able to push our way into Berlin, ending the mission. Once again, a mission on the shorter side. A little less variety than before as well. What helps this mission, though, is the transition from fighting in the streets to fighting in the buildings. It did not dip too much into that breadbasket and helped to make it enjoyable to play through. But without any real variety in terms of what is being asked by the player, it is far from a stellar moment mission, leaving it at a rank of C for me.
Our grip tightens around the black heart of Berlin. The Fuhrer demands all to shed their last drop of blood in its defense. The old, the young, the weak. If they stand for Germany, they die for Germany. Building by building, room by room, one right at a time.
The next mission brief has Reznov describing the Russians running their way through Berlin, killing the Nazis as they go, and also describing them with hatred and venom that the Russians would have had against them. We meet with Reznov and watch as the Russians torment a captured Nazi. Upon killing him, Private Chernov comments that this is no longer war, it is murder, only to be told by Reznov that that is exactly how one wins a war. We quietly go into a building and hear Nazis talking. It is now our opportunity to be the ambushers. As we work through the bombed out buildings, killing Nazis left and right, we have the joy of using the PPSH. one of the truly wonderful additions to Call of Duty, and a weapon that is still called upon fondly by all of those that have played with it. A garden hose of lead with almost no recoil, it easily dispatches Nazis with speed and is actually one of the few weapons in the game where you don't have to constantly ADS to hit anything with it. As we work our way through the buildings and go deeper and deeper into Nazi command, there is a music note that keeps ringing throughout. Anyone familiar with the zombies mode will instantly recognize it, and its presence brings with it an eerie tone as we go through killing Nazis. Once we clear the building and move out to the streets, the music takes a more hardcore and grunge rock and roll mood. The weather is pouring rain, and all chaos is erupting through the streets. Set dressing is something that Call of Duty does very well, and this section is some of the best that the series has seen. The rock music mixed with the endless gunfire and explosions, tanks rolling down the streets, blood flowing as if it were water, it's an amazing moment. After clearing the streets, we come across a group of Nazis surrounded and looking to surrender. We have a choice of what we can do here. We can either kill the Nazis, executing them quickly, or wait for our comrades to do it very slowly. The choice that we make is something that will weigh heavily on Private Chernov.
You should have shut that trap. It's only cruel to prolong an animal's suffering.
After dealing with the Nazis, we watch as bombs begin to fall and are creeping closer and closer to us. We escape down into the metro under Berlin and continue to fight our way through the Nazis that have taken up defensive positions. Once again, we have transitioned nicely to a new setting, and the pace changes to match. We creep our way forward, angles everywhere, allowing us to move around and flank the enemy positions, encouraging us to move from one side of the metro to the other. And once we get to the end of the metro, we have a final stand against the remaining Nazis as the bombing above us roars on. But not is all fine, as a giant wave of water soon comes crashing around the far end of the tunnels and rushes towards us. This is a stellar mission. We get to see the back and forth between Chernov and Reznov, asking if there is place for morality in the midst of war when dealing with one's enemy that has shown you none. Combined with the constant set changes from close quarters that are frantic to a frenzied and chaotic street battle to carefully killing our way through metro tunnels, the sound design and soundtracks playing wonderfully together. Overall, this is one of the most enjoyed missions in this game. Without the soundtrack, this would have been an easy A+ for me. But with the music fading in and out, adding to the atmosphere as we go through the level, I have to breach forward to the next tier, earning this mission an amazing S from me. If you have a copy of this game, go and play this mission right now.
The Battle of Peleliu finally came to an end in November 1944, 3 bitter months after it was supposed to. When we shipped out for Okinawa, the airfield became a vital asset in the campaign. Among those stationed there are the crews of the U.S. Navy Black Cats, men who would risk everything before they would leave any of us in enemy waters.
After what I would consider a great place to begin an alternate timeline with the Metro 2033 games, we rush back across the Pacific and listen to Roebuck talk about the war. He mentions the Black Cats, air support teams that were fearless, and instead of being Private Miller, we take the small role of Petty Officer Locke, a gunner on one of the aforementioned Black Cats. Our crew relays that they see merchant vessels and they are declared as enemy combatants. So we switch to a 20mm gun in the nose of the plane and open fire on them. During this entire mission, we will be told to man various guns throughout the Black Cat, either from the nose of the plane, the rear bottom, or one of the two sides. We make runs across the sides of the ships, shooting up and taking out Japanese PT boats and the larger vessels carrying supplies meant for the Japanese. I can't say that I am the biggest fan of this section. For an on-the-rails mission, it seems like it tries to do something new and special, but I find it trying to be too cinematic in places and wrenching control out of our hands. The guns we have at our disposal unfortunately feel on the weaker side of things as well. Constantly having to switch positions is not as fun as you might think. For a first time though, it can be enjoyable, but this is not a mission you would come back to this game for, I feel. After destroying the ships, we listened to our fellow Black Hat that they were shot up pretty badly.
Echo that. We got pretty roughed up on that last run, Booth.
Confirmed, Hammerhead. You got smoke coming from your number 2 engine.
Gauges ain't hitting red. We should be able to hold her. As long as we don't run into any more trouble with the enemy.
Soon after, we hear that American forces have been attacked and need reinforcement. To make matters worse, Japanese fighter jets fly onto the scene. And that foreshadowing didn't take long to happen. We fly over the area where our ships were hit. We make a water landing and continue to fight off as many of the Japanese fighter planes and U-boats as we do our best to rescue sailors that are in the water. Our guns run dry though, and it looks like we are dead in the water as Japanese planes come in for the kill, just to have American fighters intercept and rescue our asses. Not a fun mission. The biggest comparison that I have for this mission is the AC-130 mission from COD4, and even that isn't really a good comparison. What we had in that mission was an on-the-rails section, but we always had a view of the enemy, it was clear who we were to shoot, and the weapons we had at our disposal felt like they were extremely effective in their jobs no matter the weapon. What TreyArch did here was give us an on-the-rails section where the enemy would come in and out of view. We had no control over when or what we got to shoot, with set pieces that belong in a lower tier Michael Bay film. With that in mind, I don't feel this mission deserves anything more than D+. Now, if you'll allow me to be a bit of an armchair game designer here, I think I have a better idea of how this mission could be changed up to be much more interesting, using the same design that TreyArch has shown to us already. Their own mission from before, Blood and Iron, they show that they are fine with us not being in a first-person point of view, and that they are fine with us controlling a vehicle and not a person. So instead of playing as a petty officer on the guns, let's play as the crew of this Black Cat. Have simplified flight controls where we get to turn and bank the plane to line up our own gunning runs across the ships. The plane was already not a fast mover, so they don't even have to be any more responsive than the tank controls from before. Even the part where we have to land in the water and save the stranded and drowning sailors, that could still play out. But instead of a first-person view behind the guns, have us rotate around the plane itself. And as we switch from one angle of view to the next, it selects which guns we will be using. What was done though. The past is the past. Perhaps my idea resembled a first draft that was shot down due to complications that I cannot even begin to imagine. Unfortunately, the product that was launched just did not resonate with me very much.
Status report? The last few months on Okinawa have taken their toll. Tanks are getting bogged down, supplies aren't getting through. We can't even get the wounded out.
We jump back to being Private Miller and listen to Roebuck describe the battle on Okinawa so far. The difficulty that the Marines are faced with supplies not getting through, the rain, the mud, morale being at the lowest, they can't even get their wounded out of harm's way. They are in hell. So, back in the boots of Miller, we are outside during the rain. The Japanese are once again using ambush tactics, jumping out of the pits they have dug into the ground and seemingly jumping up from nowhere to kill us. The opening section can be a brutal one. It is literally an uphill battle for us, and we have to run right into the enemy's defenses, utilizing smoke to avoid MG nests at the top of the hill. Once we do climb that hill, we do end up pushing the Japanese into the cave. This is feeling almost exactly like Palalilu, almost the exact mission. But instead of taking out mortars or MG nests, we now are tasked with taking out bunkers housing their 200mm gun. And we can only do this by tossing satchel charges into their bunkers. So more steps than any of the objectives that came before. Once we blow up their bunkers, we reconvene with a tank that is rolling up a hill that is defended by a large bunker at the top of the hill. We fight right up to it, flanking around to take it out. We move our way through the bunker, fighting off dozens of soldiers, all too ready to charge and stick us with bayonets instead of shooting us. And at the end of the tunnel, we finally take out their last 200mm gun.
Outstanding, Marine! Out-fucking-standing! Now let's get out of this damn hole and start dealing with our wounded.
Class A level boring. This mission is feeling like the best hits of the Marines campaign by having us do the same thing that we have been doing before. The fight up the hills, going into caves and trenches, this all feels like rehashed levels. And honestly, it feels like it's filler. If you took this mission out, the first mission we have on Okinawa, I don't think the game would suffer from it. About the only new thing that they have us to do in this mission is use satchel charges to blow up bunkers. Bunkers that, I might add, you can already neutralize completely by using your flamethrower that you start the mission with. Just like you could do in the missions before. About the only new thing that this mission provides is at the very end, where we are loading a wounded Marine, one Private Houston, onto the back of the truck, and the Marines are bitching about not getting supplies. So the same damn thing that Roebuck started off with the mission briefing. I don't feel like TreyArch is lazy by any means. They have already proven themselves with the missions before that they can and do make interesting missions that are a joy to play and can bring amazing variety to us as players. But this mission feels like it was slotted in with no thought, that it wasn't even their B team that was given the lead on this mission, but it was rather designed by committee and put in by a third party. I don't like this mission. It truly feels like a different company made this, and it brings the enjoyment of the game down with it. Just as TreyArch had me amazed and give out my first S rank, they also have served me a mission that deserves my first F rank.
Everything that was asked of us, we've done. Every night, we lay in a filthy foxhole praying the enemy won't slit our throats. But this is the last time we're going to have to put our lives on the line. This is the enemy's last stand. When we take Shuri Castle, we go home, all of us.
Spoilers, this is the last mission of the Marines campaign. Roebuck tells us of the horror and hell that war is. We have horrifying statistics of the soldiers' survival chances, and to the credit of Keith Sutherland, he delivers a great tone to what Roebuck is saying. We are now attacking Shuri Castle, and we are going in alone and as ourselves. We resupply from an airdrop only to be ambushed by snipers and bonsai ambushers. We face mortar strikes as we run through the trenches and drop into tunnels to take out spotters and commanders. Roebuck telling us that he will meet up with us on the other side.
There must be spotters holed up in the tunnels. We need to take them out. Clear them out. Get in there, Miller!
We pop out on the other side in time to watch as a sergeant drops a satchel charge down and blow the tunnels up. And we continue our way up to Shuri Castle. Once we reach the castle walls, we see that the mostly deserted castle is not deserted at all. That a full battalion of soldiers are apparently still holding it, and they will fight to the death and to the last man before letting us have it. This was the infamy of the Japanese forces during World War II. They did not surrender. They fought viciously until their deaths. A little bit of foreshadowing here. It took an impossible force to make them surrender, and in the end, as Dustin said best in that one Russian Badger video,
our military is completely equipped to handle the United States. We attacked 3 boats. They dropped the sun on us twice.
we come across a courtyard where their mortar pits are, and lucky for us, we have apparently the most highly explosive thing known to infantry, mortar shells themselves. We throw them by hand and rock the earth. Once the mortar pits are destroyed, we are ordered to take the east building. As we pass through it, we hear that air support is on the way, and our objective is to clear the area of hostiles. The next courtyard is a harsh fight. There are 2 ways to tackle it, and the Japanese are not about to go easy on us. We have more tunnels that go under the castle that we have to clear out. Everything continues to be a fierce fight. But at the end of the tunnels, we come across the main courtyard, and our objective is to defend it. Then something off happens. 3 Japanese soldiers throw their hands into the air and surrender. But the Japanese don't surrender. It was a ploy. Sergeant Roebuck is attacked by 2 of them. They try to wrestle his weapon away from him, and one pulls a grenade, killing him and themselves. The music swells at our loss, smoke grenades are popped, and soon enough, more Japanese reinforcements are rushing in to kill us.
Hold the line!
We get a radio call that air support is now ready, and our objective is to call in an airstrike on the building to our north that has soldiers pouring out of it. We level it with an airstrike, but more smoke appears to our east, and more soldiers come pouring out. We have to hold out until the airstrike is ready for another run, getting a countdown from the radio operator as we fight. We destroy the building to our east, and as it crumbles, our campaign in the Pacific comes to an end.
Damn. We made it. We did it. It's over.
Roebuck is dead. Died almost as stupidly as the previous Sergeant Sullivan did. The Marines knew that the Japanese never surrendered, so why they thought that 3 random soldiers would suddenly do so at the steps of their castle should have put Roebuck on extreme edge. The mission was good though. It summed up the Marine campaign with us doing everything from before, but it did so in a way that made it interesting, which is such a relief when compared to the previous mission that we had to slog through to get here. It ended well, and it tried a couple new things along the way even. That earns a C+ rank from me.
The Red Army encircles the Reichstag, the parliament building and final stronghold of the fascist Reich. It is an honor and a privilege to play a part in this glorious battle. Our vengeance will be complete.
And now we jump back to Europe. Reznov describing that the Red Army has pushed the Germans back to their parliament building and final stronghold of the Nazis, the Reichstag. That they have choked the life from the Nazis' fascist regime with their overwhelming forces, and they seek to not just defeat them, but humiliate them, taking vengeance for what they did to Russia. Pavel Petrenko is still alive. We wake to Reznov dragging us out of the flooded metro. He turns to see Private Chernov writing in a journal and admonishes him, telling him that writing will do no good and no one will ever read his works. That should he not want to kill for Russia, he should at least die for Russia and thrust the Russian flag into his hands for him to carry into battle. We follow Reznov as we fight our way towards the Parliament building. We are treated to that wonderful mixing of actual music with gameplay as we do so. After passing through a library and several bombed out buildings, we come out to a street level and look at the ruined Parliament building and the entrenched Nazis defending its doorsteps. They have walls and barricades erected along the steps, huge flat cannons that we have to blow up, destroyed tanks still ablaze, and ruined statues litter the path as we fight our way towards the front steps. Getting to the steps is a hard battle, but the battle at the steps is seemingly just as tumultuous as the Nazis begin to really throw everything they have at us in way of grenades, infantry, and rockets. As we break through the lines, Chernov charges the stairs, hoisting the flag high, only to be cut down by a flamethrower. Reznov screams for his comrade, rushing forward as we kill the flamethrower. As he dies, Reznov stays by his side. He takes his diary and gives it to us, remarking that someone should read it.
Someone should read this.
Move inside! This is what you came here for! Kill them all! Found them to die!
Another good mission. The setting of Berlin under siege and the view as we come up to the Parliament building is remarkable. But when we look at it, I can't see where this is doing anything new. It is a great setting and the visuals are fun. So is the gameplay. But we are stuck on the bread and butter again. It's good bread and great butter though. Like Texas Roadhouse level good. But it's still just the same bread and butter. It earns a C+ from me.
The path towards our glorious victory has been a journey of blood and brutality. All of it has been necessary. When the flag of our motherland flies atop the Reichstag, all of Berlin will know that the evil of the fascist Reich has been wiped from the face of the earth.
Reznov recounts the journey we have been on is one of blood and death, but insists that we will be victorious and that our flag will fly today. We are now inside the Reichstag. We listen to the words of Chernov as we read from his diary. He describes us as Reznov had described us.
When he first spoke of Dmitri, Reznov told tales of a hero. Someone we should all aspire to be like. A At times, I have seen him show mercy, but at others act with complete brutality. I do not understand him. Perhaps heroes need not question their actions.
How he describes us can actually change depending on actions that you take through the campaign. His description can either be describing us as a true hero, as a complete savage, or as one that shows mercy and savage brutality at the same time. Reznov tells us to steel ourselves, as our vengeance is at hand, that the blood spilt will be repaid, and that we shall serve the motherland. Immediately, upon turning a corner, we face the entrance of the Reichstag. It is filled with Nazis, and they are not going to surrender. Going through the middle is impossible. We have to flank them from either side to breach their lines. Once we break through, though, and we are up the stairs, we continue to fight through the remaining Nazis, moving to a balcony to help our soldiers as they fight through the center of the Reichstag. Once we break through and are up the stairs, we continue to fight through the remaining Nazis, moving to a balcony to help our soldiers as we fire down into the defensive lines of the remaining Nazis at the center of the Reichstag. As we kill the Nazis, the Red Army finally can advance and take the building. Once their defenses have crumbled away, we fight our way past the remaining reinforcements to the roof of the Parliament building. That Russian choir is once again at our backs, and we take the Russian flag, rushing across the roof to plant it on the roof for our own victory. We are shot by one last Nazi and fall, and are about to be executed when Reznov saves us, attacking and brutally killing the last soldier.
You can make it, my friend. You always survive.
The honor should be yours.
As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
With the Nazis destroyed and routed, and the Russian flag flying, we end the final campaign of Call of Duty World at War. This is how you end a mission, not with a dumbass commander getting himself killed through stupidity, but with your friends supporting you as you claim victory over the enemy. TreyArch was able, once again, to elevate bread and butter through provocative set dressing, swelling musical accompaniment, and interesting angles to tackle your foes. This is something that levels should try to strive for and learn from even today, and I believe that a rating of B is more than appropriate for the wonderful job that they have done. We come to the section that I am the most apprehensive to address, and that is the Nazi Zombies mode that was included in Call of Duty World at War. The reason that I am apprehensive to cover this is I have never been big into the Zombies mode. When World at War came out, I skipped it. I went from COD 4 to Modern Warfare 2, so my first taste of zombies wasn't until Black Ops. It wouldn't be until sometime around 2019, like I said, that I would have a copy of World at War and play through it, an entire decade after its release. So by the time that I did this, there was no one that was online that I could play with. And from everything I've seen, both second and first hand, Call of Duty Zombies is best enjoyed as a group and not as a solo player. So I wanted to make clear that I only had access to the first map, Nacht der Untoten. I have only ever experienced this map playing it by myself. I have never reached more than round 10. I do not have access to any of the other maps due to the closure of the PlayStation 3 store, and I also did not feel like investing additional money to these maps that I would play possible a total of once or twice. That said, I can see how this grabbed people. even by myself. It was fun to play through a few rounds, using points to buy weapons off the walls, or choosing to use those same points to expand the level you're in so you're not as confined when dealing with the unrelenting horde of zombies. The loop is there, and it's easy to see how you would get hooked, especially if you had friends to play this with. I'll rank the mode, as I played it, at B-. The simplicity of the map lends itself to being learned very quickly, and I am not even sure if I learned the whole map. The use of the mystery box is fun. Even being on round 6 and rolling a Panzerschreck, which is a total death sentence, it was still fun. I know that perks in Pack-a-Punch are a thing, but I didn't find them on this level. There was a decal on the ground indicating that power could be activated to do something, but I never got it to work. But again, I am trying not to let my own failure at this level sour my opinion. I know zombie modes get better and much more complex in the future, and look forward to playing them. But a B- I feel is a great score for the first iteration of this. I can't finish this review without mentioning the music that accompanied us throughout the campaign of World at War. Where it was nearly non-existent in COD4, TreyArch made it come in hard, and they hit it out of the park. When grunge rock plays as you go through buildings, blasting Nazis, to Russian choirs supporting us as we plant our flag as we fought through the Reichstag, it has to be said that without it being there, these missions would have fell flat and not be nearly as enjoyable as they were. TreyArch leveraged their musical score well and made excellent use of them to get the player to feel excited as they played through the campaign. This game would not be the same without it. And going back in 2023 was a joy. Too often is modern Call of Duty not leveraging one of the more powerful tools to create atmosphere, instead leaning on realism to sell their game. I'll take an authentic and authored piece of content over a slavish reliance on realism any day in my video games, as I know one is going to be so much more impactful to me playing the game at a later date. And for those reasons, the music in this game easily earns an A rank from me. And there we go. I have put a rank to everything I believe should be ranked that I have access to. Like Call of Duty 4, I do not have access to the multiplayer that this game came with, so it is just not included. Just the content that one could reasonably play through today if they had a copy of this game. And after putting all of my rankings through my not-so-complex mathematical array, we come to an overall score of Call of Duty World at War being B-, the same tier as Call of Duty 4. If we go back to the score of COD4, it averaged out to a score of 7.1818. And when we peer at the average score of World at War, it is just so ever slightly behind it at 7.0588. And honestly, this makes a lot of sense to me. I would not be able to tell you whether or not Call of Duty World at War was indeed better or worse than Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare before this review. I held both of them at the same level on a tier list for me, practically the same spot. And as a package, I might have leaned on World at War, eking out due to its inclusion of the zombies mode. But looking back over the missions, we see a lot more swing with the missions ratings. While World at War swung high, earning the best level in Call of Duty so far, with Eviction getting my first S tier in this series, it also brought with it my first F tier as well. The individual missions also hovered much more around C tier than COD4's missions hovering around B tier. There is such a small difference in scores though, I am honestly splitting hairs for the difference here.